Hey folks, let's make sure it's all working. Yep, I see the bouncy bounce of the audio. Looks like we've got video and so forth. So yes, welcome. As you notice, I've changed the studio. I had the green screen up for the majority of our lectures here. That was because I wanted to try some new experiments and so forth, and I'm still screwing around with some things. But pretty soon here, I want to make some videos about Tony Stark and Jason Bourne and all that good stuff. So I decided to change the studio up a little bit. Yeah, kind of a bat cave, right, Christopher? That's kind of what it feels like. In the past, let's see, that's not the right button. I want this button, and I'm going to bring this on down here. Okay, now I can get, we got the light bulb. Excellent. You know what, Christopher, in the past, it was all very comic book-esque, but then also a lot of kind of old industrial stuff. It didn't really have a theme per se. It was just a lot of cool stuff. Still sort of that, except it's a little bit more movie-oriented now, right? So we've got ourselves the Tony Stark arc reactor, Iron Man. We've got a new film noir lamp. I've got an old typewriter here, and then of course I've got Captain America, some film stuff here, Batman on air. So kind of going that direction a little bit, because the videos that I make going forward are going to be more movie oriented. Let's see, Christopher, the lighting and all the cool stuff is very comforting and easy to watch and listen. I'm actually really glad to hear that. And Raphael, I love the background. I'm glad to hear that. In fact, at the very end of the lecture, I'm going to ask for your input on a couple of things. So stick around to the very end. I want to change a couple of things and get your input on it. Okay, so with that said, let's go ahead and get into our lecture. This is about the only view you're going to get of me, except when I come back and forth and you know, full screen to this and so forth. But that's all right. That's fine. You don't need to see me that. I can be that big. It's okay. Hey, so, you know, we have capitalism now, right? And we've talked about the pros and cons of capitalism. We talked about how it works. We talked about some of the issues around it and so forth. And we've talked about how we've tried to improve it over time and so forth. But now we get to talk about what it has created in terms of the economy, all right? So what kind of economy do we live in right now? We live in a consumer economy. Now, we've had we had the agricultural revolution, we had the industrial revolution, and the industrial revolution really brought about the consumer economy. Well, what does that mean? That's what we're going to talk about today, all right? So consumer economy. We're going to talk about a few readings today. The first one we're going to talk about is The Dependence Effect by Kenneth Galbraith, all right? One of my favorite readings. And here's what we're going to do. We're going to start out, we're going to get a whole bunch of light bulbs, because I want to ask you this. And choose whatever you want. You can say, well, you can report out on hats, jackets, and shoes, or you can do just hats or just jackets, just shoes, whatever you want. How many hats, jackets, or pairs of shoes do you own? Okay, that's the question I want to ask. How many hats, jackets, or pairs of shoes do you own? And I'm going to go ahead and confess my own here pretty soon. I'll go ahead and start out while you're writing in your answers. I'll go ahead and report out on shoes, because shoes, you know, I've probably got about 5 or 6 pairs of shoes. maybe 6 or 7 now that I think about it. I have some boots, I have some running shoes, I have some daily shoes, I have around the house shoes and so forth. Jackets, it's a funny thing. I used to own a whole lot more jackets, but I don't really wear jackets that much, so I have maybe 5 or 6 jackets. It's the hats, though, for me, that's an issue. But now let's go ahead and see what you guys are saying. So, Christopher, over 20 of all 3, right? Yeah, over 20 of all 3. We'll come back to that. Mary says, too many to count. Okay. Well, now, let me tell you my thing, right? And I should have brought one in. Every time I give this lecture, I think, I need to bring one in. Hats. Now, Julian says has about 30 hats or so, maybe 6 pairs of shoes, 30 hats. Well, I probably have about 3 dozen hats. Okay? Now, 3 dozen hats. You're like, all right, 3 dozen hats. That's a lot of hats, Lon. That's not the half of it. I own about 3 dozen hats. And guys, I don't wear hats. So what's the dealio? We're going to come back to the dealio. This is me setting up the story. So yes, I have about 3 dozen hats and I don't wear hats. We're going to come back to why that is here in a moment. In the meantime, we've got, let's see, Raphael, about 5 shoes, jackets, 3, maybe 7 hats. Caden, 2 pairs of shoes, 2 sweatshirts. Yeah, that's pretty reasonable. Okay, Julian, hats about 30 we got. And then Cassie says, I own many shoes and yet only wear about 3 pair, right? You're getting to some core elements here. Let's see. Christopher, I have a wall that hangs all my hats. Actually, I want to build a wall that does that. Okay. All right. So you guys are getting the idea here. Here's the point. Why is this? Let's talk about it. All right. And we're going to come back to my 3 dozen hats for a man who doesn't wear hats. Okay. So check this out. If you guys have taken, I don't know, Economics 101, you know the whole supply-demand quotient, right? You know supply-demand theory. Galbraith calls this the neoclassical view, all right? The neoclassical view is that consumer demand drives production. Consumers rule the market because their wants and needs create the demand. This in turn sets levels of production known as supply. Let's see. Jagat, by the way, also a bunch of shoes. Yes. Here's the idea with neoclassical here. All right. It's really simple. You guys know this. If there's a lot of demand, companies go, check this out. There's a lot of demand. I am going to make stuff to meet this demand. And then if there's no demand, companies go, you know what? People aren't buying this stuff. I'm going to stop making it. Okay? Now, there's nothing wrong with this view. I'm not about to tell you that it's wrong. Okay? There's all kinds of examples. I have some examples up here that are kind of fun. Google Glass. Now, actually, Ray-Bans is now coming out, is partnering with Meta to create Ray-Bans that kind of do a little bit of what Google Glass did. Google Glass came out and it failed utterly, so they stopped doing it. That little MP3 player that you see there, I actually owned one of those MP3 players. Intel made those things. They were a royal pain in the ass to use. And so they did not sell well. And then Apple came along with the iPod and changed everything. And then you see this kid on video phone, right? It's kind of like what we do with Zoom today. That technology has been around for decades. I kid you not. It has been around for decades. But people really didn't want it. And the technology didn't really catch on. And it was expensive and so on and so forth. So we kind of forgot about it up until like Skype came along. Okay? So this is the neoclassical view. And it holds water. Right? Yeah, like electric cars. Electric cars are a great example. We've actually had electric cars around for ages, but they didn't really until recently, right? Okay, neoclassical view. This holds water. I'm not going to tell you it's wrong. However, Galbraith says it's not that simple, okay? He says that the consumer economy creates the dependence effect. Here's the idea. It's not the consumer who dictates the terms of the industrial system, everything we produce, but rather the companies that produce and then market their goods and services. So these companies manufacture an abundance of contrived wants, which they then market heavily. All right, here's the idea, and this is key. Whereas the neoclassical view says, when people want it, we will make it. And when people don't want it, we will stop making it. Galbraith says, it doesn't work like that. Companies create it, they produce it, and then they push it and push it and push it to sell it. They create the demand, and they create the demand through marketing and advertising and all kinds of other things that we're going to talk about today. Okay? So now, the easy one I could point to is Christmas. We get that. Okay? But now, let's play with Halloween for a moment. And folks, we're going to get more light bulbs on this. Oh, we're almost, gosh, we've done well already. And we're going to get more light bulbs. Okay? Who here either sets up their house for Halloween decorations and so forth, or their parents would like decorate the house for Halloween? Maybe inside the house, maybe outside the house. How many folks here would decorate for Halloween? Now, as you put in your answer and so forth, I'll go ahead and give my answer. We set up the house for Halloween. We actually spend a lot of money on Halloween. And you know, when you go to Home Depot or Lowe's, they have these amazing animatronics and so forth. We put a lot of time and effort and money into setting up for Halloween, decorating for Halloween. Now, Raphael says, yeah, nothing too crazy. You really focus mostly on Christmas.
Hi, I'm Captain America.
Okay, that makes good sense.
Stay in school, and that if there's one thing you're going to learn from this class, it's to endure silliness.
Then we've got Mary, who says, we used to do a haunted house walkthrough to the door when you were a kid. Very cool. Cassie says, I do not decorate for the holidays, but I do like storing. I don't like storing all the items. I feel bad for the kids. I know, right? You get all this amazing crap, and then you're like, where am I going to put all this? It's nuts. Okay. Well, now, you and I both know whether or not you set up for Halloween or your parents do or not and so forth. You know that there's a huge market for this because, like I said, Lowe's and Home Depot. I love walking through Lowe's and Home Depot and seeing what they've got. And then you've got Spirit Halloween. Spirit Halloween, fascinating story behind Spirit Halloween. I won't bore you with it right now. Fascinating story about how this company started. Well, when I was a kid, you didn't set up for Halloween at all. I mean, not at all. The only thing that would happen is a day before Halloween, your parents would go, well, hell, I guess the kid needs a costume. And so they'd put a sheet over your head and cut out the eyes. Or they'd just buy a 10-cent mask and put it on your face and say, there you go. There's your Halloween costume. Go ahead and Google Halloween costumes from the 1970s. And you just see, yeah, just your style, right? Right? I get it. You see the lamest costumes because, and you wouldn't even carry around, pillowcases and stuff. No money was ever spent on Halloween. But the industry started to figure it out and start to say, we can push this stuff. One of my favorite examples also is fireworks, especially since we just had the 4th of July and now we've got Pioneer Day coming up. Fireworks are the most ridiculous thing on the face of God's green earth. You're just burning money. Now, albeit there is one step between your money and you lighting it on fire, and that is converting it into something that turns into colors and makes loud sounds. But at the end of the day, you're just burning your money. And you had that money like 2 hours ago. You had money and now you're burning it. What happened in between? Well, you converted that money into colorful gunpowder that goes boom. You know what? Just go off and yell boom at each other and, play strobe lights, right? It's cheaper. Yeah, pillowcases. Yeah, that's what we used as well, Cassie. Yeah, totally. Okay, so this is what Galbraith is saying. Now, here's another one of my favorite examples. This thing. Now, I'll tell you why it's one of my favorite examples. First of all, it is an example of industry creating something that nobody ever asked for. Okay? Nobody ever said, you know what I really wish I had? I wish I could practice my putting while I'm sitting on the can. No one ever said that. Here's my second reason why I love this. I've been using this example now for 6 years. And 3 times I have had a student say, you know what, I've got one of those. Okay, 6 years I've been teaching it, and out of, a few thousand students, I have had 3 say, I've got one. Okay, so what the dependence effect does is it really makes our economy. Okay, feels like most of you want. Yeah, right. Okay, here's the idea here. Here's the dependence effect. Now, this that I'm about to read is not from the reading. However, it is like freaking revelatory. Okay, so I want you to play with this idea a little bit. This is from an economist named Victor Lebow. This was soon after World War II, 1955, so, 5-10 years after World War II. He said, our enormously productive economy demands that we make consumption our way of life. Let me repeat that. We need to make consumption, the buying of things, our way of life. That we convert the buying and use of goods into rituals, that we seek our spiritual satisfactions, our ego satisfactions in consumption. We need things consumed, burned up, worn out, replaced, and discarded at an ever-increasing pace. Okay, we're going to break this down a little bit because this is all about the dependence effect. Here's the idea. In order for a consumer economy to work, we need to consume. It's really that simple. We need people consuming so much that when we start to stop consuming, the government gives us money. During the COVID pandemic and so forth, why did they give money? Because we stopped consuming. And they're like, you need to keep consuming, folks. Let's look at this. Convert the buying and use of goods into rituals. Now, let me ask you this. Have you ever wanted to go on a date? You wanted to ask someone on a date. Many of you are married, I understand. Many of you have partners. But remember back to when you wanted to ask someone on a date. Did you ever think, oh, I'd really like to ask so-and-so on a date, but I am broke. I cannot ask so-and-so on a date because I have no money. I am broke. Have you ever thought that? Okay. Now, as you write your answers, I'll go ahead and tell you about my hats. Remember, I told you I was going to tell you about these, is this, yeah, this one works, yeah. So I have like 3 dozen hats, and I don't wear hats. Well, now, what's going on? Well, my wife and I, we like to go to Vegas. It's kind of something we enjoy doing. I don't know. I know it's kitsch and so forth, but we enjoy it. We enjoy it. And in fact, we're going in August after this term. And in Vegas, they have this really cool hat store. It's all over in different malls there called Chapeau. And they have the most amazing selection of hats. And it's kind of become our thing to every time we're in Vegas, we buy a hat. And I don't know how it started. We kind of tell ourselves we would wear it. So like once in a while, she'll buy a gardening hat that she wears in the garden. And once in a while, I'll buy something that I kind of sort of can wear in the winter. But what it has really turned into, folks, is a ritual. We don't buy hats because we need a hat or we wear them. We buy hats because it is part of our Vegas experience. And so she has hats, I kid you not, that you would only wear to the Kentucky Derby. We're talking great big huge Easter, hats and so forth. She'll never wear those. And I have hats that I'll never wear. But it's become ritual for us. Now, I asked the question about would you date and so forth? Let's see, maybe not a date, but definitely had to change plans because we didn't have enough to go. Okay, great example. What was the question? I had to refresh the video. That's cool. The idea is, have you ever wanted to go on a date? You wanted to ask someone on a date, but you said, oh, I can't, I'm broke. And then Jagat, always prepare for that, right? Here's my point. There's nothing that says you can't go on a date if you don't have money. But our society, our consumer economy, has convinced us that it's not cool to ask someone on a date if you're broke. I mean, what are you gonna do? Go mall walking? Drive through the canyons? I mean, walk around downtown? Go to a museum for free or something? What kind of lame-o would ask someone on a date if they had no money? What message are you sending them? That's only because our consumer economy has convinced us that the ritual of dating requires money. I go to the park, right? That could totally work. Now, check it out. It also said we need things consumed, burned up, worn out, and replaced and discarded at an ever-increasing pace. I'm glad it doesn't matter where you come from, Raphael. I'm very glad to hear that. Let's talk about obsolescence, burning things up, right? There's something called planned obsolescence. This is not conspiracy. I'll show you what I mean, okay? Planned obsolescence is when companies produce goods specifically designed to basically wear out after a certain period of time. They are not made to last, okay? They are planning for this thing to become obsolete in a given period of time. Now, I have here a picture of a color printer. It's not a very good current day example, but we'll talk about more current day examples. But when I was younger, when you bought a computer, you quite often would get a color printer with it. You'd pay $200 and, or $150 and get a color printer to go along with it. Dot matrix, nothing special. Okay, fine, whatever. Well, eventually that printer runs out of ink. Back in the day, and yes, we are talking a couple decades ago, it was cheaper to buy a new printer than it was to replace the ink cartridges. I'm not making this up. You can Google it and learn about how industries built up around it and so on and so forth. So people would throw away a printer and buy a new one simply because the ink cartridges ran out. This was planned. Okay, this was planned obsolescence. So grandparents' appliances would last forever. Nowadays, they're shit. Yes, it's absolutely the case. And Raphael talks about iPhones with their updates. Okay, this is not made up. Apple has had to pay fines in the EU because many of their updates would slow down the phone. And folks, they would just say, well, your phone is probably 3 years old. You ought to buy a new phone. Why do I need to buy a new phone? It's only 3 years old. Whereas somebody else says, oh my gosh, your phone is 3 years old. Anybody here, tell me if you have a phone that is over 5 years old. I'm willing to bet that most of us, our phone is under 5 years old. But they keep updating them so darn quickly with features that you're never going to use, but you kind of feel like you need the latest and greatest. This is going to bring us to perceived in a moment. But staying on planned obsolescence for a moment, do yourself a favor. Later on, Google this video. It's a video by Veritasium. Why is it we can't have nice things? Talking about the conspiracies and how companies made sure that light bulbs burned out after, I think it was 30,000 hours or something like that. I forget what it is. Companies actually were in cahoots to reduce the life of light bulbs. Watch that video. Really, really fascinating. This is an example of planned obsolescence. So we've got 2022, just 6 months old, not the worst, mostly based upon, let's see. Yeah, exactly. Okay. Oh my gosh, you guys are getting some fantastic points. It's crazy. Okay. And then we have perceived obsolescence. Oh, 2020. Wow, you have an old ass phone there, Christopher. Yeah, okay, batteries. Raphael, you're absolutely right. One of the ways that they increased planned obsolescence is with batteries, right? Them reducing. Okay, then we have perceived obsolescence. Perceived obsolescence is it works fine. Yeah, but there's a new one out there. Yeah, but it works fine. Yeah, but I don't have the latest color. Yeah, but it works fine. Yeah, but this fashion, it's not really in anymore, but it works fine. Perceived obsolescence is when we stop using things or we replace things or what have you because there is a social perception, which we have created, that says that's no longer fashionable. Fashion is a great example of this, right? In fact, we've created this whole industry called fast fashion, right? This is K&W, this is Forever 21, and Shein, I think it is, Shein, Shein, I believe it is. Fast fashion, this is clothing that's only meant to be worn 3 or 4 times and then thrown away. But it's so cheap you can do this. It's a real problem, actually, okay? So this is what the consumer economy is doing. It's saying you need the latest stuff and your stuff is always breaking down, so you need to replace it anyway. And if you want to be in and hot and with it, you need the coolest stuff, which is why influencers are selling us all the time, because you want to be up on all the cool stuff. Fast fashion is absolutely a problem, Raphael. Totally. It's destroying the environment. It's ridiculous. It's employing child labor, slave labor. Not making this up. Absolutely. Yeah, Shein and Temu. Yeah, Temu is another example of it. Yes. Okay, let's keep going. I also like the way that Galbraith says that we have wants asserting themselves as needs. Here's the idea, is we all want things, right? I want things. Check out all this stuff. I wanted it, so I got it. But every once, if you just want something, it's hard to justify spending money on it. But if you can turn that want into a need, oh, well, now I need it. I don't have a choice. I need it. And so I start to buy things. Well, I want to do a video about Tony Stark, so I need an arc reactor in my studio. I want to do a video about Jason Bourne, so I need the red bag in the video. And I want to get different lights, and so, well, I have a business. I need different lights and so forth. And so the example that I give here is homes, Parade of Homes here in Utah. Parade of Homes. I don't go to the Parade of Homes because I like my home and I want to like my home. Whereas when I go into these big, beautiful, amazing homes that have been put together by, all the latest builders and technology and so on and so forth, I come back to my own home and I feel like it's a shack. I don't want to feel like I'm living in a shack, so I don't go to the Parade of Homes. Okay, so all of this brings us to our next reading, same topic, but a different vantage point. Thorstein Veblen talks about pecuniary emulation. Let's define this, okay? Pecuniary, well, let's first, I'm going to ask this. And you guys are going to get so many light bulbs today, it's obscene. Today, how does a person in today's world show that he or she is successful? Okay, I want you to think about this. Put the answer down in the comments there. How does somebody today show the world that they are successful? How do they outwardly manifest to others that they're successful? All right? Now, as you put your answers here, I'm going to go ahead and define for us 18-hour stories on some social media. Oh my gosh, isn't that true? Right? Christopher says most people hang a degree on the wall. Yes. And by the way, we now just hit this. That is fantastic. Let's go to our next one. Hang a degree on the wall. That's a great example. Let's see, by what they wear and what they drive. Absolutely. Okay. So that brings us to the pecuniary emulation. Pecuniary is a fancy ass word that means money. Okay. Wealth, money, filthy lucre, that sort of thing, right? All right. Emulation means to copy, to emulate, to follow as an example, okay? The people they hang around with, yes. Totally agree. Success is happiness. Yes. So pecuniary emulation is really the idea that we want to associate ourselves with celebrity, wealth, successful people. And so we wear the trappings of success. Let's see. Cassie said, by what they wear, by what they drive. So-and-so drives this, I want to drive it. So-and-so wears this, I want to wear this. So-and-so, all this sort of stuff, right? People think they're successful when they wear luxury stuff. Yes. Like cars and clothes and so on and so forth. And so this is the root of celebrity endorsements, what we see here. So if you want to be like Beckham, you wear Adidas. If you want to be like Leonardo DiCaprio, you wear a Tag Heuer. Brad Pitt and, oh gosh, what's her name there at the end? I forget her name. Olivia. Oh gosh, I forget her name. But the point is, we like to associate ourselves with that kind of wealth and with that kind of success. Selena Gomez, thank you. Yes, I knew, I wanted to say Olivia, I forget Olivia's name, but I'm like, no, that's Selena Gomez, right? I like her. We usually try to wear the clothes, celebrities, yes. Yes, this is why name brand things that celebrities wear are really popular, because this is part of pecuniary emulation, which I'm going to say I'm guilty of. We are all guilty of, by the way. So check this out, okay? This is a picture of an author. His name is Chuck Palahniuk. Chuck Palahniuk, you may not know him, but you've known stuff that he's written. He wrote Fight Club. Fight Club became a famous movie, so on and so forth. He's written a ton of books. I've read just about everything that he's written. Now, just real quick, by the way, I used to think when I was growing up, I thought that these glasses, big, thick, black frames, were so ugly. Geeks and nerds and dweebs, and they were the ones who wore big, thick, black frame glasses. And I thought that up until about maybe 15 years ago. So for 45 years, I thought, these people, they're the ugliest glasses in the world. Until I saw one of my favorite authors with these glasses. And I fancy myself a writer and a creator and so on and so forth. And all of a sudden, instantaneously in my head, I thought, those are cool glasses. And I went out and got these, and I've been wearing these glasses now for like 15 years, these frames. And it's all because of pecuniary emulation. I wanted to emulate one of my hero authors, okay? This is just in one way that I'm aware and conscious of having done it, but trust me, we all do this. And that also brings us to conspicuous consumption. Conspicuous consumption is when we are wearing things or driving things that we want the world to see us wearing and driving, and we want it to be gaudy and ostentatious and rich and obscene because we want people to see that we have money to burn. We are so successful that we can spend $35,000 on a watch. That Breitling there, that's one of my favorite watches. That's a $35,000 watch. We want the world to see that we can burn money and spend it on something as ridiculous as a timepiece. And we're good because we are that successful. Okay, so here's the question I want to ask you now. Oh, by the way, all of this, it's bling. All of this is bling. We want to show the world that we are successful. Now, coming back to Victor Lebow, check out what he says, okay? The measure of social status, of social acceptance, of prestige is now to be found in our consumptive patterns. The very meaning and significance of our lives today expressed in consumptive terms. In other words, it's just as you guys said in the comments, in the chat, is that we show the world that we are successful and we try to win prestige by what we buy, by what we wear, by what we drive, by what zip code we live in, by what kind of dog we have. I mean, you name it. We demonstrate to the world that we are successful. This is our goal. The greater the pressure upon the individual to conform to safe and accepted social norms, the more does he tend to express his aspirations and his individuality in terms of what he wears, drives, eats, his homes, his cars, his pattern of food and hobbies, and so on and so forth. So, in other words, you can't really be too crazy in this world, right? You need to fit into society, and you need to fit into society in very specific, direct ways, which means the way that we express our individuality is in things that we will end up having to spend money on. So, my garden. All right. If you guys watched that video that I sent out, the fun video on my garden gnomes, I spend a lot of time and effort in my garden, my yard. Well, that's a hobby. A lot of time and money goes into that. And yet it's something that is curb appeal. I am showing the world I am successful because I have time and money to make a beautiful yard. Now, of course, I'm not doing this consciously, right? But it's in there. All right. So, thing is, this sounds shallow. It sounds like I'm talking about shallow, materialistic people that are not comfortable with who they are. I'm not, okay? This isn't just shallow stuff. Let me explain what I mean. Galbraith says something really interesting. He says, who can say for sure that the deprivation which afflicts him with hunger is more painful than the deprivation which afflicts him with envy for his neighbor's new car? Here's the point. And I'm gonna get up and personal here for a moment. It's actually really important that you show the world that you are successful. Here's why. We are a community species. We need one another. You need me and I need you. We cannot live alone. We are hardwired to work and thrive as a society, as a community, which means it's really important to us that we fit into society, that we demonstrate our value in society. Because if society perceives you as lacking value, there's no point in having you around. You're not going to be included. You're not going to be invited to participate. You're not going to be given these opportunities. You're not going to be given the resources or access to the resources because you're worthless. So it's actually really important to our survival, let alone our ability to thrive in life, that we demonstrate to the world that we can be trusted, that we are credible, that we are smart, that we are competent, that we're hardworking, and that we are successful and valuable. So, a lot of this stuff that I do, and Christopher, you were kind enough to say, and so on and so forth. Let's see. Christopher said the Batcave is back, and Raphael was kind enough to say, like the background. All of this is part of it is saying, hey, let me in. Make me part of your learning experience, even after the semester is gone. Look, I'm hip, I'm cool. Include me in your world. Now, again, I'm stating this as an extreme to make a point, but the truth is, it's really important to us that we are able to demonstrate that we should be included. So when you see somebody wearing something or whatever, trying to fit in, this is really important. It's not shallow. So that's my assertion there. Okay, so here's the last quote from these readings, and then we're going to do a quick break. This is from RuPaul. I absolutely love this quote. RuPaul said, "You're born naked, and the rest is drag. Drag is what you put on after you get out of the shower. We're all playing these roles, you know. Even as a kid, I remember thinking, why aren't we talking about the fact that everyone's playing a role? I couldn't get anybody to break the fourth wall and say, everybody's playing a role, right? Are you seeing this? It's absolutely true. What we wear, I'm sorry, I have different buttons now. What we wear, what we do, where we shop, and so forth, it's us playing a role. You're at home right now, more than likely. You might be at work, but you're at home. So who knows what you're wearing? But I'll tell you what's in your closet and what you're going to put on when you head out. Most of your clothes are black and gray. If you're older, you might have some blue jeans or blue shirt. But most of your clothes are black and gray. Maybe some white in there, but monochromatic. You wear hoodies, and you're probably going to wear a hat, you guys, when you head out. Now, I'm telling you, you're welcome to tell me I'm wrong, but I'm not. This is what I see most of the time, because we're all wearing clothes designed to allow us to fit in. We're all wearing drag. But since you're at home, you're not in these clothes, you're in your jammies or whatever. Okay. All right. So that is that. We're going to shift gears here now. And in order to shift gears, we're going to stretch for a moment. We've been going at this for 50 minutes. You guys have already burned up the light bulbs, but there's more to do. So let's stretch for a minute. We'll go until maybe 55, so do a 6-minute stretch. And in the meantime, I'll kind of show you around a little bit of what I'm doing in the studio here to, for anyone who's still around. But get up, move around, get some caffeine, go to the bathroom, do whatever you need to do, because you can't do this forever. I've already told you you can leave, so I won't do the experiment yet. I'll do that at the very end. So, let's see. So I just got the arc reactor. I'm actually working on a video right now that talks about how to build confidence like Tony Stark. So confidence is insanely important in our success in life. And it's one of those things that we always wish we had more of, and we struggle when we don't feel confidence. And so I'm making a video about how to build confidence like Tony Stark. So I needed an arc reactor, right? I want it, but I need it. I'm also working on a video about how to do decision-making under pressure like Jason Bourne. So decision-making under pressure, Jason Bourne. So I, of course, needed my Bourne bag. I showed you my Bourne bag, the red bag, in a previous video, and I've got all my stuff in there, but I wanted this out there. I also brought out of storage some of my cool lights. These are just decorative lights. They're not real, but they're just really awesome and so forth. And they look like a movie studio. So I'm kind of going for the movie studio feel. Christopher, yeah, I'm looking forward to publishing that one. That one is going to be coming up here real soon. Got my on-air. A friend of mine gave me that on-air sign, so I've got that all lit up. And I'll tell you about this typewriter. So, as I told you, since I told you about Chuck Palahniuk there, I fancy myself a writer. I have not written fiction in a very, very long time. Of course, I write all the scripts and I write, things for courses and so forth. But I like old things and I like writing. And so I got a hold of this old typewriter. This typewriter was made in 1908. So that's pretty darn cool in my world, 1908. It is on top of these two things here. I guess you can't see the bottom one. These are steamer trunks, old steamer trunks. The top steamer trunk, this one here, was my grandfather's, and he used it when he went on his LDS mission in Australia back in the very, very, very early 1900s. So this steamer trunk is well over 100 years old. And the bottom steamer trunk is my wife's grandfather's steamer trunk that he used, same reason. This one is probably closer to maybe 130, 140 years old, because my wife's grandfather was much, much, much older. And so pretty cool that. So, Christopher, in terms of the typewriter, I actually do have a ribbon for it. I've never used it, but I do have a ribbon that I can install and get it running if I wanted to. So I've toyed with that. Let's see. You also say these videos are always super cool when you make videos like how to be like Batman. Yes. So, that's what I want to do. I want to do more videos on like Batman and Jason Bourne and Tony Stark and others, a little bit higher quality. So this is something I'm working on right now, because I've pretty much lectured on all the stuff I care about lecturing on. and I want to do something fun for a little while. So that's why I'm going to the movie direction and bringing in, so we have the Batman Batarangs over here and so forth. And maybe I'll work in some horror for the fun of it. So yeah, that's the idea there. Okay, we have got 55. So let's come on back over here. And hey, we had some conversation there, so we're going to go ahead and throw that in. Oh, which button? We'll do Batman there. Yeah, there he is. Okay. So what we're going to talk about here is ethics, but in context of this consumer economy. We've created this consumer economy, and we're basically trying to force or trick people into buying stuff. Remember, planned obsolescence and perceived obsolescence, that we make our whole life about consuming. So we are always pushing one another to consume. And so we're going to talk about the ethics in this. All right. And to do that, I'm going to tell you a story. A lot of stories today. Stories about my hats. Well, now I'm going to tell you a story about selling a car. All right. Ford Escort here. It wasn't this exact car, but it was this exact year and model and color. So my wife and I, we were very, very, very newlywed. And we were about to have a baby. Maybe we already had a baby. Did we have just one? Gosh, maybe it was two at this point. So we had two babies, and we could not, the Ford Escort, old beat up, ragtag Ford Escort, couldn't work. So I needed to sell it. All right? Needed to sell it. But now there's something about having to sell this thing. A few, maybe 6 months before, I was stupid. Cassie, yes. Great, right? Great little cars. Well, I was living in Memphis, Tennessee at the time, and I was working at FedEx, and I was coming home at about 3:30 in the morning, and it was flooding. There was a hurricane and so on and so forth. Memphis, it does this. And I drove through I thought it was a puddle. Well, turned out that we were experiencing some serious flooding. It was more than a puddle. I drove through a small impromptu lake. And water got into the engine block, and before I know it, I'm running on 3 cylinders. It's a 4-cylinder car. I'm running on 3 cylinders. Okay. So I take it home, and a friend of mine and I look at it. And what it turns out is that I had warped the head of the engine. Okay, so for those of you who don't know, there's a great big huge engine block, the big engine block, and inside the engine block are the pistons going up and down, and on top of the engine block is what's called the head. Goes on top of the engine block, the engine head, and this is where the pistons go up into, and the spark plugs are in there, and so the valves, that's where all the action happens. Well, the head warped. So I needed to fix it. And so my friend and I did. We yanked the head off. I took it into a shop, and they just shaved the head ever so slightly. Shaved the head just a little bit. However, you can't just put the head right back on, because the timing is really important in the valves and the spark plugs and the pistons and so forth. And so I had to install a brass shim between the engine block and the head. And you could see this tiny little line, a brass shim between the two. Put it on, put it all together, worked great. I only had one bolt left over. I still don't know what that bolt was supposed to go to, but I had one bolt left over, my friend and I. Okay, that's the beginning of my story. All right, so in the reading here, we have two dudes. We have the Stoic Diogenes. Diogenes was a Stoic philosopher and teacher and so on and so forth. And he says, when you sell something, and I wanted to sell my Ford Escort. He says, when you sell something, the seller must declare the defects of his wares as far as the law of the land requires. But otherwise, provided he tells no untruths, is entitled to sell goods as a seller to sell for as profitably as he can. In other words, when you're trying to sell something, you need to obey the law. You got to obey the law. But after that, so long as you're not lying or telling any untruths, you can sell it for as much as you want, so long as you're obeying the law and not lying. Okay? All right. Well, his student, his pupil, Antipater, and this goes to show that as a student, you're allowed to disagree with your professor, and Antipater did. He said, no, all facts must be revealed, and the purchaser must be as fully informed as the seller. Okay? So now, what does that mean with my car? Well, I had a decision I had to make. Do I tell the buyer, somebody who's looking at the car, do I tell them about the warped head and how I fixed it? And that's what that gold brass shim, that brass shim around there is for. Or do I keep my mouth shut? All right. So I'm like 23, 24 years old, maybe 25. I don't know. I'm young. I'm your age. I have to make a decision here because I want to sell it and I want to get a fair price for it. But fair to me is as much as I can get. On the other hand, I want to be honest. So do I tell the person as Antipater would tell me, or do I keep my mouth shut as Diogenes would tell me to do? Okay. Now, Christopher says, is this just for the listing? Everybody put a pin in that because he's asking the right question. Okay. For the listing, let's hold on to that. For the sake of this conversation, I'm talking about face-to-face. But the listing comes into play. It's like Christopher saw this. All right. So this is a real-world situation. We're not talking theory here, folks. All right? Yeah, there's a difference between how they talk in a listing versus real world. Ain't that the truth? Okay. In person. All right. Well, I'm not going to worry about this. So, St. Thomas Aquinas is selling it as is. I could just do that. St. Thomas Aquinas says, okay, let's figure out which you should do. So remember, Diogenes says you only need to tell them what's required by law, and you can't lie. Okay. Where Antipater said, dude, no, you need to tell them everything. Well, St. Thomas Aquinas says, let's work through this. And this is where the listing thing is going to come up. So he says, okay, first of all, and we're talking about my Ford Escort here. It is altogether sinful to have recourse to deceit in order to sell a thing for more than its just price, because this is to deceive one's neighbor as to injure him. Okay? So, right away, St. Thomas Aquinas says, I should not be deceptive in order to make more money. Okay? I should not be deceptive. Deceit is wrong. All right. Real quick here, Christopher says, if you're selling something, the buyer should know what they're getting, right? Yeah, we're going to see this coming up. Okay. Contracts should be entirely free from double dealing. The seller must not impose upon the bidder nor the buyer upon one that bids against him. Okay. No double dealing, no deceit. We need to be honest. Okay. It still doesn't answer my question, but it's a good starting point. All right. Now let's go on. And I'll read through. I know I'm covering it. Now, Christopher asked, are we talking about the listing? All right, let's talk about the listing, because that's what St. Thomas Aquinas asks. So, Christopher, you're as smart as St. Thomas Aquinas. You're asking the right questions. So, we're going to say KSL, right? There is no need to publish beforehand by the public crier. The public crier is the listing, okay? KSL. There is no need to publish beforehand by KSL the defects of the good one is offering for sale. Because if he were to begin by announcing the defects, the bidder would be frightened to buy through ignorance of the other qualities that may render the thing good and serviceable. Such defect ought to be stated. Okay, so let's first stop there, right? So first of all, no. I am not required to put the defect in KSL because the car works fine. It works just fine. And if I put the defect in KSL, that might scare away a potential buyer, even though it is totally serviceable and does what they need it to do. All right? Okay, so that's the first thing. Such defect ought to be stated to each individual that offers to buy, and then he will be able to compare the various points, one with the other, the good with the bad, so on and so forth. Okay, so he does say, I need to declare the defect when they show up to look at the car. Okay? Now, here's the thing, though. Do I need to express every single defect? I mean, do I need to say there is a chip in the paint? There is a small dent in the hubcap. Oh, look over here. There is, do I need to do I need to do that? Let's take a look. If such like defects be hidden and the seller does not make them known, the sale would be illicit and fraudulent. But there is no need to publish beforehand public crier. Okay, so hold on. If the defect be hidden and I don't tell them. So I don't need to point out I don't need to point out the small dent in the fender. It's like, oh, look, there's a dent in the fender. And the guy's like, I know, I can see that. It's like, oh, look, there's a scratch in the paint over here. I know, I can see that. I have come here to look at the car. You don't need to point these things out. They are not hidden. Okay, so here's the thing, though. Is the warped head hidden? Because when you open the hood, you can clearly see the brass shim. It's there. It's clearly there. So do I need to say there is a brass shim? It's right there. Furthermore, they can test drive the car and they can take it to a mechanic. Now, they may not know what the brass shim is for, but the mechanic would know what the brass shim is for. So to a mechanic, it is not a hidden defect. So do I need to point out that there is a shim there because I had to shave a micron from the head? Let's keep going. If the defect be manifest, he is not bound to state the defect of the good. Okay? All right, we got that. So, here's what I did with the car. And you guys tell me what you think. Let's come back over here. The first person came to look at the car. And just so you guys know, it's really important to me that I'm honest. That's a central tenet for me in my life. Okay, I want to be honest and I want to be truthful. So, first person comes along, I'm showing them the car, so on and so forth, open the head. Now you're welcome to take a test drive. You can take it to a mechanic and all that. And by the way, you see that shim there? That's because at one point water got into the engine and the head warped. And I did not even finish the sentence. The person said, whoa, the head warped? I said, yeah, well, the engine water got in there, the head warped, so we took off a micron and he just turned around and left. He didn't say another word. He did not try to haggle. He just left. And I thought, well, shit. I need to sell this car. And the car works great. I mean, what is the deal? It works great. It was fixed. I can't have this happen every time I point this out. So I then, with the next person, I said, here is the car. Ask me anything and I will answer anything. And you can test drive it. You can take it to a mechanic, ask anything you want, and so forth. But I did not volunteer the information. I did not say, okay, let me tell you all the things that are right and wrong with it. I just said, here's the car. Ask what you will. The person asked some questions. They test drove it. They took it to a friend who was a mechanic. And the friend says, looks great to me. And brought it back and said, okay, they bought it, and that's it. So, here's the question. Was I ethical? I mean, obviously, I know the story. I think about it a lot. And yet this happened easily 30 years ago, maybe closer to well over 30 years ago. Was that an ethical sale of my car? And don't worry, you can tell me whatever you want. You're not going to hurt my feelings, okay? Because it can be argued on either side by great minds like Antipater, Diogenes, and St. Thomas Aquinas. So, but I think about that story a lot when I think about what is ethical. And we're going to end it with, tricks and treachery are the practice of fools that don't have brains enough to be honest. I kind of like that quote because, yeah, I kind of believe that. I believe if you have to lie, cheat, and steal, it's because you don't know how to survive in the world of the honest. But that's just my take. So that is, well, wrong button. There it is. That's it today. You guys did phenomenally. And as always, do me a favor, send me an email. Let me know that you were here and participated. And before you go, I want to turn off and on a light and ask for your input. So this would be a big favor to me. You notice that I have a lot of red light on this side, and I have this blue hue over on this side. Now, if you're into cinematic lighting theory and so forth, there's this thing about orange and blue together and so on and so forth. If you watch a lot of movies, you'll notice there's always, especially in the face, there's a lot of orange, and then in lighting, there's blue. You don't care. Here's what I want to know. I don't know if this blue is good or if it's distracting. So I have an option. I can either do it as it is now, or I could do that and just take the blue out and put a little bit more of the warm light in here so that it is more consistent from this side to that side in terms of lighting. And of course, I have the arc reactor here, so that's kind of cool. So tell me what you think. I really appreciate your input. Should I leave it nice and warm like this? Or should we have that blue glow over on the side? So I appreciate your opinion. Mary says, I prefer the blue. It breaks up the orange. Julian, keep the blue. Helps with focus. Sophia, I agree with Mary. Yeah, to your point there, Mary, I kind of feel like all the orange is overwhelming, especially since I have a brick background. And so I wanted something to break up all that orange, as you said. On the other hand, I'm not sure. Orange is always a nice, warm, vibey color. Yes. And that's one of the reasons, Christopher, that I have such a heavy emphasis on it. I like the industrial look of the brick and the black and the raw iron and so on. And so when I have it all orange, just kind of feels warm. Yeah, this is good input. Jagat says go with the orange one. Personally, I like the warm light, the consistency, says Mia. Yeah. Mary, and it flows with your Captain America shield. Okay, that's another point, right? Is that I have blue here with the arc reactor, and I have some blue here with Captain America. I might get a bigger shield, who knows? So I kind of want it in more areas and so forth. Let's see, Jordan, I like the blue accent. Captain America shield for sure, yeah. So yeah, it's kind of mixed. You see, and by the way, guys, a class dismissed. We're done. Okay, now we're just talking shop. So if you have any questions for the lecture or class or anything like that, let me know. You guys did phenomenally today. Now we're just talking shop. That's one of the things when it comes to YouTube, guys, is you get in your head this myth that there is a right way to do things. Thanks, Mary and Cassie. I appreciate it. You get in your head that there's a right way to do it. And so is the blue the right way or is the orange the right way? There is no right way. And yet you kind of have to make decisions. It's always a little tricky. Christopher says you could always change one thing in the background in each video. Yeah, exactly. And Christopher, that's kind of my plan, right? I'm kind of thinking that right here is the Easter egg spot, right? That for each video, whatever is the main topic, it is made manifest here. So yeah, I've thought about doing that. And that way I like when I watch a video, I like looking at the background and seeing what's there and trying to figure things out and so forth. I just enjoy it. And so, yes, I like the Easter egg aspect of it. So, yes. Well, guys, I really, really, really appreciate your feedback on that. You've made me think about it in different ways. So thank you very much. All right, guys, have a great rest of your week, and we'll talk to you again next week. I will stick around if you have any questions, comments, but otherwise, we are all set. We'll see you later. Thanks, Raphael. I really appreciate it. We'll see you, Mia. Have a good one, Jordan. All right. Well, it looks like folks are dropping off. I don't see any other comments. Christopher, have a great day yourself. So I'm going to go ahead and drop off, and we'll see y'all later. Have a good one.